The Stoics, an ancient school of philosophy, believed true strength isn't conquering the world, it's conquering your own reactions. And today, that wisdom matters more than ever. Have you ever walked away from someone's presence and felt drained? Not tired from work, tired from them. Toxic people don't just disturb a conversation, they disturb your mind. They turn your inner life into a battlefield. But Stoicism gives you something practical, a way to handle difficult people with composure, without becoming bitter, cold, or reactive. In this video, we'll go through 13 Stoic-inspired strategies that help you deal with toxic people with compassion, grace, and resilience. By the end, you'll have a toolbox, clear, usable, and real. So take a breath. Let's begin. Identifying and understanding the toxic threat. Before any defense can be effective, awareness must come first. The Stoics understood this well. You cannot protect what you do not see. Imagine your inner life as a guarded citadel, your peace, your health, your emotional stability. No wall matters if the gatekeeper is asleep. Toxic people do not always arrive loudly. They do not announce themselves as threats. They approach gradually, often disguised as familiarity, concern, or charm. This is why recognition is the first discipline. Epictetus reminds us of a crucial distinction. It is not events themselves that disturb us, but the judgments we attach to them. Toxic individuals do not possess power over you by default. Their influence begins only when you misinterpret their behavior or personalize what was never about you. The Stoic response is a clear, unemotional gaze, not suspicion, not paranoia, observation. You learn to see behavior as behavior, not as insult, not as obligation, not as destiny. Certain patterns appear consistently in toxic dynamics. Chronic criticism, not constructive feedback, but erosion. The kind that leaves you second-guessing your instincts, your competence, your worth. Manipulation, subtle or overt. Flattery followed by pressure. Guilt framed as concern. Kindness with conditions attached. Persistent negativity. An endless focus on problems, grievances, and complaints. Not as a search for solutions, but as a way to anchor others in the same emotional weight. These behaviors are not accidents. They are strategies, conscious or unconscious, used to regulate inner chaos by exporting it outward. Stoicism teaches us to go further than surface behavior and recognize patterns of personality. Some individuals crave admiration and validation, but give little in return. Their attention feels intoxicating at first, until it becomes draining. Others thrive on social friction. They spread tension, stir conflict, and extract stimulation from disorder. Some drain energy without overt malice. Every interaction leaves you heavier, slower, duller. Recognizing these types is not judgment, it is orientation. Just as a Roman general studied terrain before committing his forces, you study behavior before committing access. Awareness allows anticipation. Anticipation allows preparation. Preparation preserves peace. The Stoic does not wait to be wounded before acknowledging the threat. They see clearly, early, and without emotion. That is how the citadel stays standing. Fortify your walls. Awareness alone is not enough. Once a threat is identified, defense must follow. For the Stoics, this defense was called boundaries. Imagine Marcus Aurelius, not as a philosopher, but as a commander responsible for an empire. Walls were not optional. They were survival. Your boundaries serve the same function. They define where you end and where intrusion begins. Without boundaries, even minor toxicity spreads. With them, chaos is contained. Stoicism teaches that self-respect is expressed through action, not argument. The first step is internal clarity. You must decide, without negotiation, what behavior drains you, destabilizes you, or violates your sense of integrity. Is it constant pessimism? Manipulation masked as concern? Intrusive advice? Disrespect disguised as honesty? Do not minimize these signals. A Stoic does not debate with reality. Once you see what crosses the line, the boundary already exists. You are simply choosing whether to honor it. The next step is clear communication, not emotional, not accusatory, not dramatic, firm, measured, direct. Stoicism favors I statements because they keep responsibility where it belongs. Not, "You're always negative," but, "I disengage when conversations turn consistently negative." This is not negotiation, it is information. Precision matters. Vague boundaries invite testing. Clear ones reduce confusion. "I need space" can be ignored. "I'm not available for this conversation right now" cannot. Tone is critical. Assertive does not mean hostile. Calm does not mean weak. A Stoic sets limits without anger because anger signals loss of control. But boundaries mean nothing without consistency. A wall with gaps is decoration. Toxic individuals test limits by design, not because you were unclear, but because enforcement reveals resolve. When boundaries are crossed, respond the same way every time. No escalation, no lectures, no emotional surplus. Repeat the limit, then adjust access. Distance is not punishment, it is consequence. Stoicism rejects the idea that protecting yourself is selfish. Seneca warned against envy and resentment because they corrode the soul. Boundaries prevent this corrosion by stopping harm before it embeds. You are not responsible for how others feel about limits that preserve your peace. You are responsible for maintaining the walls that keep your inner life intact. A citadel with strong walls does not fear intrusion. It simply remains standing. Become uninteresting to the emotional barbarian. Some threats do not attack directly. They provoke, they poke, they test, they seek reaction. These are the emotional barbarians, individuals who feed on intensity, conflict, and disturbance. Their power does not come from logic. It comes from your response. Stoicism dismantles this dynamic at its root. The Stoics taught that external stimuli only gain power when the mind grants it. Remove emotional engagement, and the threat collapses. This is where the Grey Rock method aligns perfectly with Stoic principle. Not avoidance, not suppression, neutrality. You become emotionally unremarkable. Unresponsive does not mean disrespectful. It means unavailable for drama. A smooth stone offers no grip, no edge, no leverage. Toxic individuals crave reaction, anger, defense, justification, hurt. These reactions validate their behavior. They confirm influence. Stoicism refuses this validation. Seneca reminds us that freedom is found when we stop attaching our peace to the behavior of others. When insulted, you do not counterattack. When criticized, you do not explain. When baited, you do not bite. You respond with calm facts, or not at all, short, neutral, closed. That's noted. I hear you. Understood. No tone shift, no emotion leak. At first, the barbarian escalates. They push harder, mock louder, attempt guilt or intimidation. This is not failure. It is confirmation. They are losing access. Consistency is essential. One emotional response resets the game. Calm repetition ends it. Stoicism teaches that dignity is preserved not through dominance, but through restraint. You are not here to win arguments. You are here to preserve inner order. By becoming uninteresting, you shift from participant to observer, from target to spectator. Their chaos continues, but it no longer enters you. And when attention dries up, most barbarians move on in search of easier terrain. Your peace remains intact. That is not passivity. That is control. The broken record technique. Some toxic people do not provoke for emotion. They persist for control. They argue in circles. They shift angles. They exhaust you into compliance. Stoicism answers this with perseverance without escalation. The broken record technique is simple, and that is why it works. You choose a clear, rational position, and you repeat it calmly, without variation. No justification, no defense, no emotional coloring, just consistency. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when you stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Manipulative individuals rely on momentum. They wear you down by forcing engagement, debate, guilt, confusion, urgency. The broken record removes momentum. You state your boundary once, then again, each time unchanged. I'm not available for that. I'm not available for that. I'm not available for that. Nothing added, nothing softened, nothing sharpened. This repetition frustrates manipulators because it denies them openings. They cannot twist what does not move. They cannot exploit what does not expand. Think of waves crashing against stone. The wave argues. The rock does not. This technique is not confrontation. It is refusal to be redirected. Stoicism values reason over persuasion. You are not trying to convince them. You are affirming yourself. Manipulators may escalate, raising their voice, invoking emotion, changing tactics. Do not follow. Return to the same sentence, same tone, same calm. This is discipline in action. The broken record also preserves dignity. You do not attack. You do not defend. You do not justify your right to choose. You simply exercise it. Seneca warned that emotional engagement with unreasonable people multiplies suffering. This technique short-circuits that suffering. Eventually, one of two things happens. They stop pressing, or they reveal their true intention. Both outcomes serve you. Stoicism does not require you to overpower others. It requires you to remain unmoved. And nothing is more disarming than calm repetition rooted in self-command. Don't take the bait. Toxic people often do not seek resolution. They seek reaction. They cast emotional bait, insults disguised as jokes, guilt framed as concern, provocations masked as honesty. Their goal is simple: pull you into their emotional current. Stoicism offers a powerful defense: indifference, not apathy, not numbness, indifference. The Stoics made a clear distinction. Apathy is disengagement from life. Indifference is detachment from what does not deserve control over you. Epictetus taught that some things are up to us and others are not. Other people's moods, projections, and manipulations belong firmly in the second category. The moment you react emotionally, the bait works. Anger, defensiveness, justification, all signal that the hook is set. Stoic indifference breaks the line. First, recognize the tactic. Is this comment designed to provoke, to guilt you, to draw you into explanation? Once named, its power diminishes. Awareness alone weakens manipulation. Second, refuse emotional attachment. You acknowledge the statement, but not the intent behind it. You respond, if at all, without charge. That's your opinion. I see it differently. Noted. No escalation, no defense. When there is no reaction, the drama starves. Negativity requires participation. Without it, it collapses. This does not make you cold, it makes you sovereign. Seneca warned that resentment is self-inflicted suffering. Every emotional reaction to provocation hands your peace to someone else. By practicing indifference, you remain a witness, not a participant. The toxic person may push harder. Sarcasm sharpens. Pressure increases. Hold steady. You are not here to prove strength. You are here to preserve it. Stoicism teaches that inner calm is not something to defend loudly. It is something to refuse to surrender. When you do not take the bait, you send a clear message. Your emotions are no longer accessible. And when access disappears, control follows. The art of the non-reaction. Some people do not provoke for conversation. They provoke for domination. They sharpen words into weapons. They seek escalation, humiliation, and emotional control. Stoicism answers this not with counterattack, but with mastery of response. The highest discipline is not reaction. It is restraint after awareness. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is not emptiness. It is presence without surrender. Most people are conditioned to respond, to defend, to explain, to win. The Stoics trained themselves otherwise. Marcus Aurelius warned against wasting time arguing about what a good person should be. His answer was simple: be one. Non-reaction disrupts the toxic dynamic. The provocateur expects impact, anger, shame, justification. When none arrives, their momentum collapses. Like a blade striking air, their force dissipates. Silence communicates something words cannot. You no longer control the field. This does not mean permanent quiet. It means intentional stillness. You speak when speech serves reason. You withhold when reaction would serve ego. At first, non-reaction may trigger escalation. Insults sharpen. Pressure increases. This is not danger. It is exposure. You are witnessing desperation for influence. Hold steady. A Stoic understands that emotional storms burn out faster when they are not fed. Non-reaction also protects dignity. Every impulsive response reveals leverage points. What unsettles you? What wounds you? What can be exploited? Stillness closes those doors. You are not ignoring reality. You are refusing to be governed by it. Epictetus taught that freedom begins the moment we distinguish between what touches the body and what governs the mind. Non-reaction is that distinction in action. It is not weakness, it is command. The one who controls their response controls the encounter, and when you no longer react, the power silently shifts back to where it belongs, within you. Limit your exposure. Stoicism does not demand endurance of harm, it demands discernment. There is a difference between resilience and unnecessary proximity to damage. You cannot control who is toxic, but you can control how close they stand. A Stoic does not remain in a storm to prove strength. They step aside and let the storm pass without them. Limiting exposure is not avoidance. It is strategic withdrawal. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire by choosing his battles carefully. He did not meet every threat head-on. He preserved strength for what mattered. Your energy is finite. Your attention is valuable. Toxic people consume both without producing anything in return. The first boundary is physical. When possible, reduce contact, shorten conversations, decline unnecessary engagements, exit environments that drain rather than sustain. You are not obligated to be constantly accessible. The second boundary is emotional. Some people cannot be avoided. Workplaces, families, long-standing social ties. Here, distance becomes internal. You observe without absorbing. You listen without agreeing. You engage without attaching. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events themselves, but from the meanings we assign to them. Limiting exposure includes limiting interpretation. You do not take ownership of their frustration, bitterness, or volatility. You allow their behavior to pass through you without lodging inside. This requires discipline. The mind instinctively wants resolution, explanations, fairness, understanding. Stoicism teaches restraint instead. Not every behavior deserves analysis. Not every comment deserves response. Not every person deserves access. Limiting exposure also clarifies reality. When you step back, patterns sharpen. Manipulation becomes obvious. Repetition reveals intention. Distance removes confusion. What once felt personal becomes predictable, and what is predictable can be managed calmly. This practice creates space. Space for recovery, space for clarity, space for relationships that are mutual, respectful, and life-giving. You are not responsible for absorbing chaos to keep others comfortable. Stoicism values harmony, but never at the expense of inner order. To limit exposure is to choose peace without hostility, distance without contempt, self-respect without explanation. The Stoic understands this quietly. If something consistently disrupts your equilibrium, it does not belong at the center of your life. And stepping away is not abandonment. It is wisdom. Build a support system. Stoicism is often misunderstood as solitary strength. In truth, it is selective connection. The Stoics did not isolate themselves. They chose their company carefully. You are shaped by what surrounds you, by voices you hear repeatedly, by standards you tolerate, by examples you absorb. A strong inner citadel is reinforced by those allowed inside it. Seneca wrote that we should live as if our thoughts were visible to those around us, not because we fear judgment, but because character strengthens in the presence of virtue. A support system is not a crowd. It is a council, few people, chosen deliberately, grounded, steady. These are the people who do not inflame you, do not compete with you, do not drain you. They stabilize you. When you are dealing with toxic individuals, isolation weakens judgment. Negativity distorts perception. Self-doubt grows louder in silence. A Stoic support system does not rescue you from hardship. It reminds you who you are within it. These individuals do not feed outrage. They restore perspective. They do not dramatize your experiences. They help you see them clearly. The Stoics valued friendship, rooted in virtue, not usefulness, not entertainment, not convenience. Virtuous companionship acts as a mirror, reflecting your discipline when it falters and your strength when you forget it. Building such a system requires intention. You invest time where values align. You withdraw from connections that reward weakness, chaos, or complaint. Quality replaces quantity. One grounded voice outweighs 100 noisy ones. A support system also protects against self-deception. When surrounded only by your own thoughts, blind spots grow. A trusted ally can challenge you calmly, without humiliation or manipulation. They correct without dominating. They advise without controlling. Stoicism does not reject help. It rejects dependence. Support strengthens resilience when it encourages responsibility, not avoidance. And you must also become this presence for others. Stoic relationships are reciprocal. They elevate both sides. You listen without rushing to fix. You speak without imposing judgment. This mutual restraint builds trust, and trust builds resilience. No fortress stands alone. Even the strongest walls benefit from watchful allies. The Stoic understands that peace is preserved not by isolation, but by choosing who is allowed close. Build wisely. Prioritize self-care. Stoicism does not glorify exhaustion. It values sustainability of the self. You cannot guard your inner citadel with a depleted mind or a neglected body. A Stoic understands that strength is maintained, not spent recklessly. Toxic environments drain quietly, not through single moments, but through repetition. Over time, this erosion dulls judgment, shortens patience, and weakens resolve. Self-care is not indulgence, it is maintenance of capacity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the body is a tool of the mind. When neglected, it distorts perception. Rest restores clarity. Movement restores balance. Stillness restores order. Without these, even discipline fractures. Stoic self-care begins with awareness. Notice when your tolerance thins, when irritation rises faster, when fatigue clouds decisions. These are not moral failures, they are signals. Ignoring them invites error. The Stoics practiced daily rituals, reflection at night, preparation in the morning, moments of solitude between duties. These were not luxuries, they were safeguards. Physical care matters. Sleep stabilizes judgment. Nutrition steadies emotion. Movement clears stagnation. A neglected body amplifies stress and makes toxic behavior feel heavier than it is. Mental care matters. Silence recalibrates the nervous system. Journaling extracts chaos from thought. Meditation creates distance between impulse and action. These practices prevent contamination. They ensure that what enters your environment does not take residence within you. Emotional care matters. You are allowed to disengage, to decline demands, to protect time without justification. Stoicism does not require constant availability. Seneca warned that a life without margin is a life already in danger. Self-care also sharpens boundaries. When rested, you respond rather than react. When centered, manipulation becomes obvious. When grounded, provocation loses its pull. This is not self-absorption, it is self-command. A Stoic tends the self so that virtue remains possible under pressure. Without care, even wisdom becomes brittle. To preserve inner peace, you must maintain the instrument through which peace is experienced. Self-care is not retreat from life. It is preparation to meet it steadily. And the Stoic prepares without apology. Remember, it is not about you. Toxic behavior feels personal, but most of the time, it is not. Stoicism teaches a difficult truth. People act from their inner condition, not in response to your worth. When someone lashes out, manipulates or demeans, they are revealing their internal disorder, not issuing a verdict on you. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that people act from ignorance, fear, and habit. To expect otherwise is to misunderstand human nature. This is not excuse-making, it is clarity. When you internalize another person's chaos, you surrender your equilibrium to something that was never yours to carry. Stoic detachment allows you to step back and see behavior as information, not insult. A toxic person projects outward what they cannot resolve inward. Their criticism often masks insecurity. Their hostility often hides helplessness. Their control often compensates for inner instability. Seeing this does not require pity, it requires perspective. Epictetus taught that suffering begins when we confuse external behavior with internal meaning. You are not diminished by someone else's volatility. You are not defined by someone else's inability to regulate themselves. When you remember this, emotional hooks lose their grip. You stop defending what does not need defense. You stop explaining what does not require explanation. You observe without absorbing. This distance restores power. Not power over others, but power over your reactions. And that is the only power Stoicism values. When you no longer take toxicity personally, you respond with reason instead of reflex. You choose boundaries without bitterness. You disengage without resentment. The noise quiets, and what remains is clarity. Stoicism does not ask you to harden your heart. It asks you to stop misplacing responsibility. Their behavior belongs to them. Your peace belongs to you. When you remember this, nothing needs to be proven. Nothing needs to be returned. You simply remain steady, untouched by what was never yours. That is Stoic strength. Do not try to fix them. There is a quiet trap many fall into when facing toxic people. The belief that if you explain enough, care enough, endure enough, they will change. Stoicism rejects this illusion. You cannot repair another person's inner disorder from the outside. Epictetus was clear. We are responsible only for what lies within our control. Another person's character is not among those things. Trying to fix toxic people often feels virtuous, but it usually becomes self-betrayal. You give energy where there is no receptivity. You invest patience where there is no accountability. You confuse compassion with responsibility. And slowly, your own stability erodes. Stoics understood human nature well. They knew that transformation requires voluntary effort, not external pressure. No one changes because they are corrected. They change when they choose to see themselves clearly. Until then, your explanations become noise. Your patience becomes permission. Your endurance becomes reinforcement. This is why Stoicism teaches restraint. You may offer clarity once. You may state boundaries calmly. You may model virtue through action, but you do not chase reform. Seneca warned against attempting to rescue those unwilling to be rescued, not out of cruelty, but out of realism. Trying to fix someone who benefits from dysfunction keeps you trapped in their cycle. You become the stabilizer of instability, the regulator of chaos, the one carrying weight that was never assigned to you. Stoic wisdom says, stop, not with anger, not with contempt, but with clarity. You redirect attention inward. Instead of asking, how do I change them? You ask, how do I respond wisely? You shift from correction to positioning. You choose distance where there is resistance. You choose silence where there is manipulation. You choose disengagement where there is stagnation. This is not abandonment, it is self-command. The Stoic does not confuse kindness with self-sacrifice. You are allowed to let people remain as they are, while you move differently. And when you release the burden of fixing others, something remarkable happens. Your energy returns, your clarity sharpens, your peace stabilizes. You stop wrestling with reality and start aligning with it. That is Stoic maturity. Know when to walk away. Stoicism is not endurance at all costs. It is alignment with reason. There comes a point when continued engagement no longer serves virtue, growth, or peace. Staying in a harmful dynamic does not make you strong. It makes you depleted. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that life is short and time is not to be squandered on needless disturbance. Walking away is not failure. It is recognition. Recognition that a situation cannot be improved by your presence. Recognition that your energy is better invested elsewhere. Stoicism teaches acceptance of what is, not attachment to what should be. You do not walk away in anger, you walk away in clarity. There is no need for dramatic exits, no speeches, no ultimatums. A Stoic departure is quiet. It may look like fewer conversations, less access, reduced emotional availability, or, when necessary, complete separation. Distance does not require explanation to be valid. You are not obligated to remain accessible to harm. Seneca warned that some company corrupts even strong minds through prolonged exposure. Wisdom knows when proximity becomes poison. Walking away protects the inner citadel. It preserves judgment. It restores order. It prevents resentment from replacing reason. Many remain trapped because they confuse loyalty with self-neglect. Stoicism dissolves this confusion. You can wish someone well without staying close. You can release a dynamic without condemning the person. You are not rejecting them. You are choosing yourself. And this choice creates space. Space for steadier relationships. Space for growth. Space for calm. A Stoic does not chase closure. Closure comes from understanding. Once you see clearly that a situation undermines your equilibrium, no further debate is required. You step away with dignity intact. That is not avoidance. That is wisdom in motion. Forgive yourself. The final work is inward. After boundaries are set, after distance is created, after clarity is earned, there remains one quiet task many overlook: forgiving yourself. Stoicism understands that prolonged conflict does not end when the situation ends. It lingers as self-blame, rumination, and regret. You replay conversations. You question decisions. You wonder why you stayed so long, why you tolerated what you did, why you didn't see it sooner. This is where many remain trapped, not by others, but by themselves. Stoicism offers release. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that we act with the understanding we have at the time we have it. You did not fail because you trusted. You did not err because you hoped. You responded with the tools and awareness available to you then. Wisdom is not retroactive perfection, it is growth. Self-forgiveness does not mean denying harm. It means refusing to continue punishing yourself for lessons already learned. Regret has a purpose: to sharpen discernment. Once it has done that work, it must be dismissed. Holding on to resentment toward yourself keeps the toxic dynamic alive internally long after it has ended externally. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when we stop carrying what is not ours. That includes unnecessary self-condemnation. You are allowed to move forward lighter than you entered. Stoic forgiveness is not emotional indulgence. It is rational release. You acknowledge what happened. You extract the lesson. You let the weight fall away. No rehearsals, no self-accusation, no reliving. You return attention to the present, the only place where virtue is practiced. Forgiving yourself restores agency. It allows calm to replace tension, perspective to replace fixation, resolve to replace doubt. And with that forgiveness, your inner citadel becomes whole again, not hardened, not guarded by bitterness, but reinforced by understanding. The Stoic does not emerge untouched by adversity. They emerge refined. You are no longer shaped by what challenged you. You are shaped by how you chose to respond afterward. And now you move forward steady, clear, and unburdened. That is Stoic completion. Conclusion: what you've learned here is not a collection of techniques. It is a way of standing in the world, Stoicism does not ask you to fight every battle. It asks you to decide which battles deserve access to your mind. You learned that awareness protects peace, that boundaries preserve strength, that silence reveals truth, that distance can be wiser than confrontation, that not every wound requires engagement, that not every person deserves access, and that the deepest work is never changing others, but governing yourself. Toxic people lose power the moment you stop feeding their chaos with reaction, explanation, or self-blame. You don't defeat them by overpowering them. You defeat them by becoming ungovernable. This is the foundation of NexusMind: calm instead of confusion, clarity instead of resentment, discipline instead of exhaustion. NexusMind is not about withdrawal from life. It is about command within it. It is choosing awareness over noise, restraint over impulse, positioning over confrontation. This path is quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not seek validation. It works internally, consistently, invisibly. A person with a trained mind does not need to prove strength. Their presence already does. Carry this forward simply. Observe more than you speak. React less than you are tempted to. Protect your energy without apology. Choose peace without explanation. Forgive yourself without delay. This is NexusMind, where awareness replaces noise, where restraint becomes authority, where calm becomes strength. Remain steady, remain clear, and let nothing unworthy take residence in your inner world.